The TARDIS materialized in the quiet cul-de-sac with its usual grinding wheeze, disturbing only a scattering of autumnal leaves and the slumber of a particularly rotund fox rummaging in a nearby bin. The Doctor, ever eager, flung open the doors, a grin splitting his face. Muswell Hill, just the place for a spot of tea and crumpets. Louisa emerged cautiously. She sniffed the air. Smells normal. Surprisingly normal. I was expecting something more interdimensional. Well, sometimes the most insidious things creep in unnoticed, the Doctor replied, already striding towards the main road. He was clad in his usual linen jacket, now adorned with a peculiar badge depicting a stylized red balloon. Louisa caught up to him, smoothing down her teal skirt. A balloon? Doctor? Really? What's the connection? A hunch. My dear Louisa, a hunch. Plus, Mrs. Miggins baked some truly delightful red balloon-shaped biscuits last time we were here. I'm hoping she's still got the recipe. He winked, his eyes twinkling with an energy that belied his age, as they turned the corner onto Muswell Hill Broadway. However, the festive atmosphere the Doctor anticipated was replaced by a palpable tension. A large group of people, mostly parents holding homemade signs, marched slowly down the street, their faces etched with grief and anger. The air hung heavy with unspoken accusations and simmering resentment. What's going on? Louisa asked, her voice hushed. The Doctor stopped, his jovial expression fading. He ran a hand through his unruly hair, his brow furrowed. Something's not right. I can feel it. The signs they carried were simple, stark. Justice for David. Our children deserve better. No more secrets. A police cordon held back the marchers from the shops. Uniformed officers, their faces grim, watched the crowd with wary eyes. A news crew, struggling to maneuver through the throng, filmed the scene. David, that's the boy, Louisa realized, reading a discarded newspaper headline on the ground. The one they found in Highgate Woods. They are calling it an accident, a tragic fall. But I don't think these people believe that. The Doctor was already moving, weaving through the crowd. He stopped a woman holding a picture of a smiling boy with bright blue eyes. Excuse me, madam, he said, his voice gentle but firm. Can you tell me what happened to David? The woman's eyes welled up with tears. He was a good boy, always smiling, always sharing. They said he fell, but he wouldn't have. He was careful. Something happened to him. I know it. And what do you think happened? The Doctor pressed, his gaze intent. The woman hesitated, glancing around as if afraid of being overheard. They're saying it was the children. A fight. Gone wrong. But my David, he wouldn't fight. The children, Louisa interjected, her voice laced with disbelief. You think other children were involved? The woman nodded, her lips trembling. Something's changed in the neighborhood. The children are different. They're secretive, angry, always vying for something they shouldn't have. Before they could ask more, a gruff voice interrupted. Oh, what's all this then? Move along. You're disrupting the protest. A burly police officer with a weary expression stood before them. We're just asking questions, the Doctor said, holding up his hands in a gesture of peace. Trying to understand what happened. Leave it to the professionals, the officer retorted. This is a sensitive situation. We don't need any nosy Parkers getting in the way. He ushered them away from the crowd. As they retreated, Louisa looked back at the marchers, her face troubled. The children are different. What did she mean by that? The Doctor remained silent for a moment, his eyes scanning the scene. The anger, the grief, the underlying fear. It was all too palpable. He could feel the weight of something sinister pressing down on the neighborhood. I think, Louisa, he finally said, his voice low, we need to find out exactly what kind of game these children are playing. As darkness fell, the mood in Muswell Hill grew even more oppressive. The marchers had dispersed, but a lingering sense of unease remained. The streetlights cast long, distorted shadows, turning familiar streets into menacing labyrinths. The Doctor and Louisa were walking along Fortis Green Road, their investigation already underway. The Doctor clutched a crumpled map of the area, constantly checking their location. According to this, he said, pointing to a dotted line, the woods are the key. That's where David was found. That's where the answers lie. Louisa shivered, pulling her coat tighter around her. I don't like this, Doctor. It feels wrong. Like we're being watched. We probably are, Louisa, the Doctor said, his eyes scanning the shadows. But don't worry, I've got my sonic screwdriver. It's excellent for detecting lurking evil and opening stubborn jam jars. They ventured into a narrow alleyway, its brick walls covered in graffiti. The air was thick with the smell of damp and decay. Suddenly, a faint sound reached their ears. A child's laughter, high-pitched and unsettling. The doctor stopped, listening intently. That's coming from the park. They followed the sound, emerging into a small, dimly lit playground. Two figures swung slowly on the swings, their faces obscured by the darkness. "Hello," Louisa called out cautiously. "Are you all right?" The figures turned, and Louisa gasped. They were two young girls, their eyes wide and vacant. They stared at the doctor and Louisa with an unnerving intensity. "What are you doing out so late?" the doctor asked gently. The girls didn't answer. One of them pointed a thin, trembling finger towards the sky. "The red balloon," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "We need the red balloon." The other girl giggled, a shrill, unsettling sound. He promised us the red balloon." "Who promised you?" the doctor pressed. "Who are you talking about?" The girls suddenly straightened up, their eyes focusing on something behind the doctor and Louisa. "He's here," one of them whispered, her voice filled with a strange mixture of fear and excitement. "He's coming to give us the red balloon." Louisa turned around, her heart pounding in her chest. But there was nothing there, just the shadows, the empty swings, the rustling leaves. When she turned back to the girls, they were gone, vanished without a trace. The doctor was examining the ground, his brow furrowed. They were here, just now. But where did they go? He shone his sonic screwdriver on the ground, its high-pitched whine filling the air. The device began to fluctuate wildly, emitting a series of erratic beeps. "Something's interfering with the readings," the doctor said, his voice troubled. "Something alien." He pointed the sonic screwdriver towards a nearby oak tree. The device beeped faster, more insistently. "There!" the doctor exclaimed, grabbing Louisa's arm. "Look!" Hidden amongst the gnarled branches of the oak tree, almost invisible in the darkness, was a small object, a deflated, crimson balloon. As the doctor reached out to touch it, a voice rang out through the park, cold and sharp. "Don't touch that!" Standing at the edge of the playground, bathed in the pale moonlight, was a figure that sent a shiver down Louisa's spine. He was tall and gaunt, dressed in a long, dark coat that seemed to swallow him whole. His face was pale and angular, his eyes burning with an unnerving intensity. "Who are you?" the doctor asked, his voice calm but wary. "I am the warden," the figure replied, his voice a low, rasping whisper. "I protect this place. And you are trespassing." "Trespassing?" the doctor scoffed. "We're simply exploring the area, admiring the local flora and fauna. You are disturbing the peace," the warden insisted, taking a step forward. "You are awakening things best left undisturbed." "And what things are those?" Louisa asked, her voice trembling slightly. The warden's eyes flickered towards the deflated balloon in the tree. "Things that crave, things that hunger, things that will do anything to get what they desire." "The red balloon," the doctor said, his voice thoughtful. "That seems to be the key to all of this." The warden stiffened. "You know about the balloon?" "We know that it's connected to the tragedy that befell young David," Louisa said. "We know that the children of this neighborhood are behaving strangely. And we know that something terrible is happening here." The warden remained silent for a moment, his gaze fixed on the doctor and Louisa. Then, he sighed, a long, weary sigh that seemed to carry the weight of centuries. "Very well," he said. "I see that you are not easily deterred. I will tell you what I know. But be warned, the truth is not always what you expect." The warden led them deeper into Highgate Woods, the trees closing in around them like skeletal fingers. The air grew colder, the silence more profound. "I am a guardian," the warden explained as they walked. "My family has watched over these woods for generations. We protect them from the darkness that lurks within." "And what darkness is that?" the doctor asked. "A darkness that feeds on envy and desire," the warden replied. "A darkness that corrupts the innocent." Generations ago, a toymaker lived in this village. He was known for his beautiful, handcrafted balloons, especially the red ones. They were so loved that the children would trade anything to get their hands on them. "And what happened?" Louisa asked. "The toymaker disappeared, and all that was left was the balloons. But these weren't ordinary toys. They fed on the darkness of childhood envy. They turned the children against each other, driving them mad with desire." The balloons eventually disappeared. We thought they were gone forever, but it seems they've returned. And these balloons are affecting the children again, making them obsessed and jealous, the doctor said. The warden nodded solemnly. They crave the balloon above all else. They will lie, cheat, steal, even harm others to get their hands on it. And David, Louisa began, her voice catching in her throat. David was a good boy, the warden said, his voice softening slightly. He tried to resist the influence of the balloon, but he was too late. He was killed by children driven mad by greed, each wanting nothing more than the cursed red balloon. The doctor stopped, his face grim. We have to find a way to stop this, before more children are hurt. It won't be easy, the warden warned. The balloons are powerful. They feed on negative emotion, and there's plenty of that to go around in this world. He stopped, in a clearing, bathed in moonlight. In the center of the clearing was a small, ancient-looking stone altar. This is where it all began, the warden said, gesturing towards the altar. This is where the toymaker made his pact with the darkness. This is where we must break the curse. The doctor examined the stone altar, his fingers tracing the strange symbols carved into its surface. These symbols, they are not from any language I recognize, he mused. They seem organic, almost alive. The toymaker used them to channel the darkness, the warden explained, to imbue his balloons with their power. So we have to reverse the process, Louisa said, her eyes narrowing. We have to find a way to cleanse the altar, to break the connection between the symbols and the balloons. Easier said than done, the doctor said, shaking his head. We need to find something powerful enough to counteract the darkness. Something pure. He thought for a moment, tapping his chin thoughtfully. Wait a minute, I think I have an idea. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, silver whistle. It gleamed in the moonlight, emitting a faint, ethereal glow. This is a resonance whistle, the doctor explained. It's tuned to the frequency of pure, unadulterated joy. If we can amplify its signal, we might be able to disrupt the flow of darkness through the altar. He handed the whistle to Louisa. Hold this tightly, Louisa. Focus on every positive emotion you can conjure. Happiness, laughter, love, everything good and pure. Louisa nodded, closing her eyes and taking a deep breath. She concentrated on the silver whistle, focusing all her energy on the positive emotions that flooded her mind. The doctor, meanwhile, began to fiddle with his sonic screwdriver, adjusting its settings to amplify the whistle's signal. The device emitted a high-pitched whine that grew in intensity, filling the clearing with a strange, otherworldly sound. The altar began to tremble, the symbols on its surface glowing with an eerie, red light. The air crackled with energy. Suddenly, a chorus of voices erupted from the darkness surrounding the clearing. Children's voices, filled with anger and resentment. Give us the balloon, they chanted. We want the red balloon. A group of children emerged from the trees, their eyes glowing with an unnatural light. They were the same age as David, their faces contorted with greed and hatred. In their hands, they carried crude weapons, sticks, stones, even broken bottles. Stay back, the doctor shouted, waving his hands in the air. You don't want the balloon. It's only going to hurt you. But the children didn't listen. They surged forward, their eyes fixed on the red light emanating from the altar. We have to buy some time, the warden said, drawing a long, silver sword from beneath his coat. Hold them off as long as you can. The warden charged towards the children, his sword flashing in the moonlight. The doctor, meanwhile, continued to work on his sonic screwdriver, struggling to amplify the whistle's signal. Louisa stood frozen in place, her eyes wide with fear, but she knew she couldn't give up. She had to focus, had to channel all her positive energy into the whistle. She closed her eyes again, concentrating even harder. She thought of her family, her friends, the joy she found in art and music. She thought of the doctor, his boundless enthusiasm and unwavering optimism. And then, she felt it. A surge of pure, unadulterated joy coursing through her veins. The silver whistle began to glow even brighter, emitting a dazzling light that filled the clearing. The children recoiled, their faces contorted in pain. The red light emanating from the altar began to flicker and fade. The whistle, now shining brighter than any star, was too much for one of the children to resist. A boy around 8 years old lunged up to reach for the whistle. The warden noticed this and jumped in to protect Louisa. As he jumped in, the boy fell, and the stone from his face was enough to kill him. The others stopped, their eyes filled with horror. The power of the red balloon was broken. The silence in the clearing was broken only by the sound of the wind rustling through the trees. The darkness that had hung over Muswell Hill had finally lifted. The sun rose on Muswell Hill, casting a golden glow over the quiet streets. The air was fresh and clean. The birds were singing. The nightmare was over. The doctor and Louisa stood in the playground, watching the children play. They were laughing, smiling, behaving like normal children again. "It's over," Louisa said, her voice filled with relief. "They are free." "Yes," the doctor said, his eyes filled with a mixture of joy and sadness. But at a cost. They both knew that the children would never forget what had happened. They would carry the scars of the red balloon with them for the rest of their lives. They were unable to bring the boy back, with his death haunting everyone involved. The warden joined them, his face weary but resolute. "Thank you," he said to the doctor and Louisa. "You have saved our town. You have freed our children. I will forever be grateful." "It was our pleasure," the doctor said, shaking the warden's hand. "But the fight is far from over. There are other evils in the universe, other darknesses that need to be confronted." He turned to Louisa, his eyes twinkling. "Are you ready for another adventure, my dear?" Louisa smiled. "Always, Doctor." The doctor and Louisa stepped back into the TARDIS, the doors closing behind them with a familiar thud. The machine whirred and groaned, preparing for its next journey through time and space. As the TARDIS dematerialized, leaving Muswell Hill behind, the doctor looked back one last time, a thoughtful expression on his face. "The red balloon may be gone," he said, "but the darkness that created it is still out there. We must be ever vigilant, ever ready to fight for the light." And with that, the TARDIS vanished, leaving behind only the memory of a terrible evil, and the hope that the children of Muswell Hill would never again be lured by the promise of a red balloon. The doctor and Louise made one last promise to the warden, to find whoever made this toymaker this way and finish him for good. Only time would tell if this goal would be achievable.